This podcast is brought to you by the Heldridge Hotel, New Brunswick's only 4-star hotel and a preferred hotel of Rutgers football fans. The Heldridge helps you make the most of your game day weekend, providing premium accommodations in the cultural heart of downtown New Brunswick. Restaurants, bars, theaters, parks, museums, and more are only steps away. Whether you're traveling alone or with a large group, book your stay at the Heldridge and make the most of your game day weekend. Visit theheldridge.com today.
At Sierra, discover top workout gear at incredible prices, which might lead to another discovery. Your headphones haven't been connected this whole time. Awkward. Discover top brands at unexpectedly low prices. Sierra, let's get moving.
From NJ.com and the Heldridge Hotel. Welcome to the Rutgers Rant, your one-stop podcast for the Scarlet Knights. With your host, Steve Politi, and Rutgers insider Brian Fonseca. Let's start shopping.
All right, everybody, welcome back to the Rant. Big week. Big week. 2 reasons. Reason number 1, that man right there, he's in Las Vegas. How's Vegas?
Well, you tell me. How does my $5 chip look? Politi? There's a lot more where that came from.
Wow. You must be raking it in, man. Woo. I hope it's better than last trip to Vegas.
I'm now only down 25 to 30,000. No, I'm joking. I'm not down that much money. And I know my parents listen to the show. I'm not down that much money, but I made a little dent into my lifetime losing to MGM. I'm gonna make it all back.
Mama Fonseca just had a heart attack back in Kearney. Get home. You got to tend to your mom. That's good. What time's the game there? Like 4 a.m?
It feels like it. So we're recording right now. It is 10:30 local time where you and all our listeners are. It is 7:27 in the morning, Las Vegas. And I'm trying really hard not to wake up all of my neighbors with these thin walls.
Okay. All right. So this game against Tennessee we will not be talking about it. Obviously, you will listen to this podcast after that game is played. We're going to talk about the last game, though. It's going to be a tough episode for the Positivity Podcast, I'm afraid. We're, of course, going to preview the biggest college football game of all time, Rutgers Penn State on Saturday. And to do it, we're going to have one of the greatest Rutgers quarterbacks of all time, Ryan Hart, coming on our show to make picks for us, talk about his time at Rutgers. It's going to be fun. He's a great guy. Can't wait to talk to him. We're going to do that at the end of the show, make our picks, but I think we should just start with basketball and get it the hell out of the way. Can we just you want to skip ahead? If you don't want to hear it, folks, just skip ahead like 10 minutes. We're not going to spend a lot of time on it, but when you lose to Central Connecticut State at home by 13 points, we got to talk about it. And we haven't talked about it. And it's just like a lingering stench that I think must have followed this team all the way to Vegas.
Yes. And for the 10 people who are diehard enough that really want to hear thoughts on the Rutgers Tennessee game, I will be doing a live show on our YouTube. So if you're listening to this now after the game and you're like, I just haven't had enough Rutgers Tennessee content, go on our YouTube page and there'll be about 25 minutes of me talking about what I am predicting right now to be a pretty heavy loss for the Scarlet Knights because of what we watched Friday, where a vastly inferior team, Tennessee, Central Connecticut State, walked into the rack and played like it owned the place. It was the better team for 35 minutes. It led for the last 32 minutes. It felt like the inverse of the usual when Rutgers is hosting a low major, where the scrappy underdog comes in and cuts the lead to 3 points or 1 point, and you think, oh man, they're going to turn it around. But instead, they blow it open and win by 13. And that happened to Rutgers at the Rec.
Yeah,
on its 83rd consecutive sellout. I mean, you can't believe stuff like that. But in all seriousness, I mean, it was every fear and every red flag that you had entering the season of what could go wrong, what are the things that could hurt this team, they came to bear on Friday because that was not the worst loss Rutgers has had under Steve Pikiell. Lafayette still worse because of all the other factors, but the most the biggest indictment has to be that game because they didn't look like they belonged in the same court with Central Connecticut State.
Yeah, that's not a great sign. Yeah, and you're right. The worst fears. That's kind of what I wrote down. And really, it boils down to a good team, a decent team, and apparently like a very below average team, which was Central Connecticut State, can figure out how to take one guy out of the flow. You take Grant out, and what do you got left? That's it. Like there's just Dylan Grant's your one good player. He had a bad night. Like, what's you look at this roster, like, all right, who's going to step up? All right, Tariq Francis, okay, had a nice game. But where's everybody else? Where's the rest of this roster? It was like looking down at this box score. You're like, holy cow! Like, that's really alarming. I mean, just alarm bells sounding all the way around Piscataway. Yeah, I don't know where this team. Okay, it's just one game. I get it. They play in Vegas, get a chance to redeem themselves pretty quickly out there with, even one good performance, one win would be like, okay, all right, maybe we can have a basketball season. But man, I don't know. I am certainly adjusting my expectations for what the season's going to be, and they were rock bottom.
I mean, I'm not, because it wasn't just one game. It was 3 games. It was 4 games. It was the Lehigh, Maine, and American games where, they won by double digits, but it never felt like they dominated. And then you lose that game. That's kind of what it's hard to say that this team is struggling or whatever when they win the games, but when they lose that way, then all bets are off. I think we knew this team was nowhere near as talented at high end as last year's team, right?
Right.
No disrespect to Dylan Grant. He's a good prospect. He will be a good player. He's not Dylan Harper. He's not a guy that can carry you to a victory in that kind of game where you give him the ball at the top of the key, you set a screen, and he drives to the rim and no one could stop him. He's not Ace Bailey, who could have 2 guys on him that are 6'7", because CCSU didn't have size and could just shoot over them. And that was the central issue here. And I think I'm going to call my shot here. They're not Dylan Harper, Ace Bailey, where last year they're in a overtime dogfight with a top 10 SEC team and they don't lose, but Rutgers is in that game. I don't think Rutgers is going to have the horses to keep up with Tennessee for 15 minutes, let alone 45. So I agree there. And the thing is that at least if you had won that game, you're 5-0 into Las Vegas. It would be a bit of a fraudulent 5-0, but 5-0 nonetheless. I mean, you have the second worst non-conference streak of schedule in the country, but you'd be 5-0. Now you're 4-1. You enter Vegas with a 1-game losing streak. And if you look at the schedule, regardless of who they play the third game, they're going to be underdogs. So there's a chance that they lose. So they have 1 loss in a row. Tennessee, Notre Dame, the third game, Purdue, Michigan, Seton Hall. That's a potential 7-game losing streak, something they haven't had since Pikel's third year.
Wow.
So it's just a matter of we know this could get bad. How bad could it get?
Yeah, it's to have that kind of streak before you get to really get to the meat of the schedule, before you get to, we've looked at January with you start to sweat just some of those stretches they have when the Big Ten starts, to be 4-7 at that point. I mean, now the over under, they're going to get to 10 wins. I don't know. I mean, honestly, and again, this is not oh God, they're overreacting to one loss. They don't look better than Central Connecticut State. Like, you're supposed to look a lot. You're supposed to look like, the eye test, like, they have a bad game, but you're supposed to just look so much better than these teams. They don't look that better than Lehigh. It didn't look that better than American. When you're watching the games and you're like, all right, one team's taller, one team's a little bit more physical, but talent wise, you just don't. I don't know. That's really. And then you play a game like that, play a team that's well coached, play a team that's more gritty than you, hustle than you. All these things that Rutgers was supposed to do again this year. That was it. That was the other part. We're going to rebound. We're going to defend. We're going to out hustle teams. We're going to be prepared. We're going to want it more. No. None of that. That's it's the scary part. The whole point of this season was proof of concept. This is what Rutgers is going to be again. Steve Pikel team. We're going to out-scrap you, defend you, win 52-50. We're going to be underdog. We're going to be the more physical team, the stronger team, the better defensive team. No. I mean, none of that. I mean, that's really what that's why the sirens going. And I get it. I understand all the reasons why it's hard to develop that when you're bringing a lot of new guys in and it takes time, but that's the reality of the world in college basketball. That's what concerns you about, what he's trying to do here now, right? Look, we're trying to build this team that was this way of winning that worked in whenever the hell it was, not that long ago, in 2018, which doesn't, a lot of signals tend to don't let you believe it's going to work now. And that's just all of this came crashing down in this game.
And if there's a time to show those signs, it's against Central Connecticut State and American and Maine. It's not, if you can't do it against these guys, what is the hope that you could do it against Ohio State or whoever? There's a lot of concerning signs. Limited resources in NIL. We've talked about that ad nauseum.
Oh,
That
you know what? I'm done with that. Don't talk about that after this game. I mean, come on. I don't want to hear the NIL stuff.
Let me finish my point. Don't yell at me. I didn't lose to Central Connecticut State. All right,
you got $3.5 million from the rev share. You got $1 million from where you are in Vegas. You got $4.5 million to spend on this roster. You know what Central Connecticut State has? Zero.
That was going to be my point, right?
Did I interrupt you before you can make your point? I'm sorry. I apologize.
It's okay. It's one thing I've done that to you 100 times. So it's about, we're about just about my gambling that I'm chipping away at. You're chipping away at the amount of times I cut you off. So we're even there. It's one thing to do that against a Purdue or a Michigan who have, more money than God, essentially. Central Connecticut State, Maine, Lehigh, American, and Rider might be in combined debt considering what Rider is going under right now. They might owe the NCAA money, whereas Rutgers has more money. That cannot even be in the conversation. And that's why this loss makes that excuse ring so hollow because, I mean, come on. This was not a matter of NIL and talent. This is just a matter of like massive issues on both sides of the ball offensively, right? So first of all, Central Connecticut State had the most talented guy on the court. Darren Smith was the best player on the court. That's not a good sign. That's not a good sign. Rutgers is offensively shooting 34.4% on threes, which is good. That's their best. They're on pace to have their best 3-point shooting team under Peichel. They only take 1 out of every 3 shot from 3. They're shooting 48.2% on twos, and they take a majority of their shots on twos. So my point being, like, they don't take good shots. They don't take optimal shots. They don't have an optimal offense. We know that already. ISO, whatever. And then defensively, they don't rebound. They don't force steals, right? It's one thing if you have a size disadvantage, which this team does. What you have to do is what they did the 23-24 year, where they were a bad team, but they had a top 10 defense because they wreaked havoc. They had hands all over the place. They forced turnovers, and they had an elite center. They don't have an elite center. They don't have guys that force turnovers. They don't have guys who can stay in front of their man. They don't have anything defensively. And again, to your point, Steve, like the one thing that you can control is effort, right? And I'm not saying they're not playing with a lot of effort. What I'm saying is I remember vividly watching those early Steve Peichel teams. They looked like they were going to run until exhaustion, until like they were going to collapse. And they just played so damn hard. And I just don't think this team is at that level. And I think Steve is clearly frustrated to some degree with that, because if you watch the press conference on Friday, he didn't sugarcoat anything. And he always sugarcoats stuff.
Good for him for not doing it for once, because it would have been a hard sell, even without you there to needle him. And this is, we're to talk about this. I think we've got months to talk about basketball. I get it. I will come back to this now, where, like, I'd love to see the money distribution. Where did you spend this? Like, where did you spend the money you have? Like, what, you've got guys, you went out and got guys who just can't play against American. Like, how are you going to play in the Big Ten? Like, I don't have to name them. Anyone watches these games. It's just, I just don't understand. I just want to know, like, what happened. You seem to have collected players who don't look like Big Ten players. I don't know. I mean, that's like, again, you didn't start with zero. You had some money. So that's going to be the theme of this winter. And, I'm sorry, like, people who are going to give him the get out of life free card, get out of jail free card for the NIL situation. It's just not, does not apply here. It just, they should not be that bad, period.
We've talked about this ad nauseum, right? Like, it's one thing to have limited resources, but when you have them, you have to deploy them at the most efficient way possible. You have to find the diamonds in the rough, and you have to allocate the resources. Again, I don't know how they were distributed, but is it worth getting a second center when Byfall is just not playable? You can't play the guy. I mean, he just does not belong on a Division I court. So is it worth spending however much you spent on him and a couple of other of the 7 freshmen, or do you pool together money for 1 player or for 3 players and get 1 really good player? I don't know that, but I think this is the concern with the GM thing, right? Yes, the GM is there to get money. Let's say the GM pulls together a ton of money. Are you convinced that this coaching staff, the way they view the game, the way they've kind of deployed their resources in the past, will deploy the extra money in a way that is worthwhile? Or should you have someone from the outside with a different eye who can take the extra money they raise and help them deploy it in the most efficient way? Because they hit on Cam Spencer once. Excellent. They hit on Jacob Young. Good. I mean, there's a lot more of the other misses than there are of Jacob Young and
Right.
Cam Spencer, and that's a concern.
Very big concern. All right, put a tack in that for a minute. We'll come back to basketball. You're going to cover it out there. Plenty of time to talk about it. Let's move on to the biggest game in college football history here in Piscataway. The game. Screw you guys out in Ann Arbor and Columbus talking about your game. This is it. Penn State. We're finally here. I don't know. Did the weekend, this is, I guess, the question for me, for a lot of people, did the weekend's results take a little bit of excitement off this? Rutgers hung in there with Ohio State. Okay. But Penn State, just smacked around Nebraska, a Nebraska team that, certainly looked like it was going to be going to a good bowl game. Does it take a little bit of the shine off this one for you, Brian? What do you think?
Oh, I think it adds more excitement, right? Because this isn't going to be some tomato can Penn State team throwing in the towel, right? Like that was always my concern, that if you beat Penn State, there's going to be the asterisk of like, this is a lifeless Penn State team. We don't care, whatever.
Right.
Like this is a Penn State team that's fighting for a bowl game and playing well, right? Yeah. They ran the ball down Nebraska's throats, right? They dominated Nebraska, which you think of all, they're down their starting quarterback, but they should still have a defensive front that could handle, Penn State, right? But Penn State is playing, its two top running backs are playing at a level where they were expected to play at the start of the season, right? So you can't question the desire, and you can't question like whether they're going to want to win this game. Now, before I forget this, I want to bring this point up as the Positivity Podcast. And I know this doesn't follow my premise here. It doesn't start off positive, but just hear me out.
Okay.
In the event Rutgers loses this game, right, there is a silver lining. They might cause Penn State to hire Terry Smith as its permanent head coach. Which is the loss is a short-term hurt, but long-term, that might set up a couple more you could beat Penn State scenarios.
Yes. That's fascinating. That's a fascinating point. They're playing very hard for Terry Smith. I saw funny. I was playing pickleball over the weekend with a guy that Penn State had. And he was fired up for Terry Smith. He's like, this guy's great. Okay. I will say this, you look around, I don't know. At one point, you could make a list of candidates who I thought would be the guy at Penn State. I no longer know who that is. I have to have a sneaking suspicion that they must know, though, right? They must have a name. I can't believe they would have gotten to this point without having somebody in mind to hire for this job. You don't fire James Franklin when they did without having an idea of it. And you would thought it was the guy. I thought it was the guy who they just beat against Nebraska. If it's not him, I don't know. I just have to assume there is. But that all aside, that's not what's important now for Rutgers. What's important now is Terry Smith's doing a pretty good job.
Terry Smith has revitalized James Franklin's elite roster, right? Mm-hmm. He's got them playing hard. He salvaged the season that was going down the tubes.
Yep.
They almost beat Indiana. They've beaten Michigan State and Nebraska pretty handily. And that's alarming for Rutgers because this is a team that we've said all along is more talented than Rutgers by a significant margin. Right. So Rutgers was going to have to make up that gap in the motivation department and all that stuff. I think Rutgers, though, is better than Michigan State and in different areas is, on par with Nebraska. Right. Certainly not defensively, but they have better offensively, especially with Nebraska down their starting quarterback. So I don't know if it didn't take the buzz away from the game to me, but it did lower my confidence in Rutgers being able to we can get to the picks later. I wasn't entirely convinced Rutgers was going to win this game, but I am less convinced Rutgers is going to have a good shot after watching what they did against Nebraska.
Right. I will say I feel better about it. On the inverse is true as well. I feel better about it because of what I watched Rutgers do in Columbus. And there are things that it did well there that it has not done all year. Got to the quarterback, eliminated the big plays, things that you have to see. That you have not seen this year. And so it works both ways. If this defense, this is going to be the great unknown for this Rutgers team. If this defense, the way it played against Columbus, had played like that against Minnesota or Iowa, when they might already be bowl eligible. This is the problem with this team, that they did not have a defensive effort like that until they played the best team in the country. And, it's not gonna, there's not gonna matter. They're just gonna be better than they're gonna win. They're gonna be better than you. Eventually they will figure it out. They're Ohio State. But I like the fact that Eric O'Neill, Bradley Weaver, these guys are getting to the quarterback. The secondary looked okay. Things that were a big problem early in the year. Again, the bar's on the ground, right? I wrote off this defense. It's terrible. I saw something that gives me a little bit of hope that, this could be a closer game. And, then you're just counting on your senior quarterback. You're counting on, elite running back. You're counting on these two receivers to have NFL quality games. All right. That's the hope you have if you're a Rutgers fan. The defense keeps you in the game and the offense wins it.
100% agree with that last point, right? The thing with the defense is like they played hard and they had that one big stop at the goal line, but they are what they are, right? They're going to pressure the quarterback, but they're not going to get to him. In the last 5 games, they have 1 sack on 51 pressures. I mean, that's just they just don't get to, they don't complete the play. So I'm not going to expect them to come in and sack the quarterback 5 times, but what they could do is to pressure them and to make it harder for him to find open receivers or get the big plays, right? And they don't force interceptions. They just don't. It's just not something they do. So I don't think this is going to be a defense that's going to have those game-changing plays. What they have to do is not give up the big plays, right? They did a decent job against Ohio State until the very end, and just continue to play well on a down-to-down basis the way they did against Purdue and against Maryland, and just do not let Nick Singleton or Katron Allen break free into the open field, because that's what's going to kill them. Right. And then, yes, offensively, they had their worst game because they played a borderline NFL defense. They're going to have a little bit more separation as wide receivers and more ability to score. It's just a matter of, can you get to the 30-point mark? That to me is that's probably the marker for me.
You mentioned Allen and Singleton. Allen's got 1,077 yards on 188 carries, so 5.7 average, 14 touchdowns. And I didn't realize this until I just looked at it. Singleton's got 463 yards, but he's got 11 touchdowns, averaging 4.1. What's interesting to me, I didn't realize this either. Drew Allar is still, even months after the injury, still their leading passer. It shows what, where the priority is with this team now. Ethan Grunkemeyer. How you pronounce that name? Is it Grunkmeyer?
No idea.
Okay, that's fine. Phil Senna, whoever calling the game, will figure it out. He's completing 67% of his passes, but only 870 passing yards. Clearly, this has been a team that's wanted to run the ball. I hope what Rutgers did against Ohio State, a lot of guys in the box, a lot of guys around the line of scrimmage. I hope that's the blueprint for what they're going to try to do here. I think it probably will be. It's going to be a tough task. No one denies that. But, man, the payoff, again, we can't talk about it enough. The payoff is just huge here if they win this game.
Right. Look, Grunkemeyer is not going to beat you with his arm, but if you give him time, like he had against Nebraska, he's going to complete the passes. He was something like 11 of 13, and he had a similarly efficient line against Michigan State. So he's not going to beat you, but he's going to move the ball if Rutgers does not get in his face and create pressure. And if you have a quarterback that can keep you honest and complete passes, that's what makes the run game effective, right? Because you got to lighten up the box and you got, So, I don't think Rutgers has to worry about the quarterback per se, but they have to make his life as hard as possible. And then, look, I mean, I think the factor here is I'm really interested, and I mean this sincerely, like, what is the crowd going to be like? Like, is this going to be an all-time Rutgers crowd? Are people going to be frothing for this win? Are people taking this game as seriously as we are? Like, I mean, we know we joke about the biggest game of all time, but like, we view this as like a really pivotal moment here at Rutgers. Do the fans feel the same way? Are they going to show up in the same way? I think so, but that's going to be an interesting factor as well.
I think so. And I just heard anecdotally from people, hey, Pat Landy's taking 25 people a game. I heard that, and so him alone, us kicking him off the Rutgers Rant added 25 people to the stand. So you can thank us, fans. Kidding, we didn't kick Landy off. People know that. I think it's going to be a great atmosphere. I think based on everything you've heard, and I'm curious what the mood of the crowd is. I mean, we talked about it like that 2014 game when it was just like an angry Rutgers crowd at night, drunken, angry, kind of vile, little on the edge crowd. I guess I'm thinking that this one's going to be excited, but also a little nervous. And we talked about it in the post-game show. Like, there are several scenarios that this could go into. I think, any Rutgers win is bedlam. I mean, storm to field kind of level. I bet you that's going to happen for a Rutgers win. I think it will. I think people will be that excited for a Rutgers win. But there are there are a couple of scenarios in the other direction where, a bad Rutgers loss, another 38-14, like a dud, would just be really deflating in this game. Like and that can't, this game, that's the payoff of a big game. It can go both. When it goes the other way, it's bad. And I think that's a scenario that Greg Schiano can have. If it's close and they lose, it's going to be devastating, but at least, there would have been an opportunity there. But man, I mean, you got to get 1988 off the board. I'm about to call some of these guys from the 1988 team. It is like my ringtone should be "I got you, babe." When I call them, we have this conversation like every 3 or 4 years. Like, oh, it's you again. What are we going to talk about? Can't you use the quotes from 2011 when we talked about this? Come on. Yeah, but it's true. We've been doing the same conversations about the Penn State game forever. It's time to just get rid of that thing. Scratch that off the list of things. Let me ask you this, and this is a good question for you. What, in your opinion, if they do win, where would it rank? Could you rank it in the pantheon of big wins for Rutgers, or with the 5-7, the fact that Penn State is not even a winning team, change that?
Interesting question. If they win, it'll be Greg Schiano's 100th win as a head coach. So I would write where it ranks among his 10 best wins, and I certainly think it would be within the top 10. Because yes, like they're going to be a 5-7 Penn State team, the worst, most disappointing Penn State team, maybe in program history. The worst in 10 years, the most disappointing in program history. Just let me correct that.
Mm-hmm.
But it's a big game, and it's the first time Rutgers wins a big game in how many years? So many years.
Yeah.
Right. And it's again, to your point, if you lose this game, no matter which way, it's a kick in the nuts, an absolute kick in the nuts. And I think that fans at some point will feel like, why do I keep tricking myself into believing this is the one, when it just it never happens. So I think that every time you don't win one of these games, it is you're hitting against the faith of a fan base that just keeps coming back. And I think winning would just rejuvenate people. I really do. I think you'll go into the offseason feeling, not that Rutgers is going to have a huge year next year, but you feel like, all right, the program is at a point where it can win a game like this. They're only a 10.5 point underdog, right? Like it's not like they're playing an insurmountable team. So I would, to answer your question, I mean, you tell me, but I would say somewhere of Greg Schiano's 100 wins, if they win this, somewhere in the 5 to 7 range, probably.
Yeah, I think that's exactly it. That's what I was going to say. And it ain't Louisville. It's not the Texas Bowl, which was huge. Probably we can ask Ryan Hart about that in a couple minutes. But I wonder if the first win to become bowl eligible that year was significant. Crossing that, getting that was even a bigger albatross that this program carried. The fact that you went to one bowl game, it was the Garden State Bowl, to kind of cross that bridge into that territory where you're a perennial bowl team again. I think it might be 5th or 6th. Yeah, it might be top 5. I mean, I don't know. Like, do you put the Washington game in there? Do you put the Michigan State game his first year back? Do you put there's some? I'm looking for wins in Greg Schiano 2.0 that would compare. Yeah, I don't have a list. I don't have a list of them in front of me. The fact that one doesn't jump out is pretty telling. The beating Miami in that bowl game, is that bigger? Let me ask you that. Is it bigger than that? Probably.
I don't think so. I think one could argue so. I think that this game would be the biggest of Greg's 2.0.
Yep.
And I'm thinking 1.0, like you said, Louisville, 04 Michigan State was a big win.
Yes, it was. Yep.
The first bowl. Yeah. There are enough in the first go around that you can put over this, but in this 2.0, you'd be hard pressed. You'd really have to make a case for another game to beat this one if they win this one.
Right. All right. Let's take a break there and ask Ryan Hart what he thinks about that. Make our picks. We'll be back in just a minute.
In America, half of every dollar spent on brand medicines goes to entities who don't make them. While middlemen like PBMs and 340B hospitals drive up costs, Biopharma is investing $500 billion in new infrastructure and manufacturing here at home, and helping patients buy medicines directly at lower prices. Tell Washington to end middlemen markups and put American patients first. Visit phrma.org/middlemen.
All right, we are back with Ryan Hart, a man who's familiar with the Scarlet Knights playing in big football games. Hey, how you doing?
I'm doing well, Brian and Steve. Pleasure to be here. Big fan of the podcast. And when I heard last week and have a guest picker, I texted you immediately, said, hey, I'll do it. It's Penn State week. Why not?
That's the pull we have. We get quarterbacks coming to us.
Yeah.
Teal hasn't done that. That's why you are the greatest quarterback in school
That's
history.
right.
You
That's
came to us
right.
first. You're down in Florida these days. You're still watching. You're still keeping up with the Scarlet Knights.
I do, and that's the reason why I listen to your guys' podcast, because I've been down here in Florida now for 4 years, and I want to feel connected to the program. So you guys do a really good job of the insights of not just what the fan base is feeling, but really what the coaching staff is doing. Brian, I know that you're at all of the interviews and watching the practices, so your perspective, I think it's fair. It's justice, right? I mean, I know you had Michael on there doing the positivity podcast, but I think you guys shoot straight. I mean, I don't think you beat us one way or another. And most of the year, you've been picking Rutgers to win, right? So it's not like you're going one way or the other. So I think you guys are fair. You guys do a good job. Pleasure to be here.
I agree. I think we're a little too homerish, Steve and I. I think we have to go a little harder against the Scarlet Knights.
Wow, who would have guessed?
But yeah, thanks again for being on here, Ryan. I've been curious for your perspective all year here on Ethan. Obviously, he's back for his second year, and I think we've said that he's developing a resume as one of the best quarterbacks in program history, as one of the best quarterbacks in program history yourself. Just what have you thought of what he's done and this season in particular?
Well, first and foremost, he's a tremendous person. That cannot go understated. I had the opportunity to meet with him in June. My family went up to New Jersey for a wedding and was able to arrange a lunch between my son, myself, Ethan, and AJ. And it was a really cool experience. And my son's an up-and-coming quarterback. And what I really wanted him to do is kind of pick the brain of Division I quarterbacks, right? As I told the guys, there's 18 teams in the Big Ten. The Big Ten is arguably the best conference in the country. So there's very few people that do what you do. And I think that it was interesting because during that lunch, I thought my son would be asking all the questions, but it was more Ethan, AJ asking me questions and my experiences. So it was very similar. And I'm proud of Ethan. I think he's overcome a lot of adversity. It helps to throw to 2 NFL receivers. That definitely helps a lot when it comes to the stats. But as I told him, you're guaranteed one more year of football, which was going into this season. There is no guarantee that you're going to play professionally. So make the most of the opportunity. And I told him in June, you need to set the standard. The standard is not 6 and 7 wins here. It should be 9 and 10 wins and trying to make it to the playoffs and see where you go from there. So he understood that. Obviously, we had some tough games in the beginning of the season, but I'm proud of Ethan. And I told AJ, I said, dude, you're one play away. You have to prepare like the starting quarterback. You have to basically pick Ethan's brain as much as possible because, like it or not, you're the next man up. And proud of both those guys in their development. I hope we can pull it off this week so they can play at least one more game and extend their career. I think my records are safe from Ethan. Thank God he's only a 2-year starter, not a 3-year starter. But overall, the development from his first 4 games last year to where he is now is night and day. So hopefully, like I say, he can finish it off in this last one.
Are your records safe from AJ? What did you think of him?
Very impressed with AJ. I remember Schiano telling me that he is an NFL body in terms of speed, arm strength, the ability to process that information. He just needs reps, right? I think a lot of people underestimate the quarterback position is getting real reps in games. And it's been tough where he hasn't got a whole lot of reps. So going into next season, to Brian's point and to your point, Steve, is there's a lot of pressure with the tough schedule to put in a brand new quarterback that's had minimal reps in his career thus far. So a lot of expectations, but I think AJ can handle it.
I don't know if it's a 1-to-1 comparison between you and Mike, but I mean, you and Mike went back to back, and you're the only 2 quarterbacks in program history to get 3,000 yards in a season. You guys are the 2 best quarterbacks in program history, certainly stat-wise. I think we can all agree prestige-wise. Do you see some similarities between those 2? Just not exact situation, but between what you and Mike had to what they have now?
I do. I see, Mike he redshirted, and then the next season is when he got some reps. And then I actually was benched my senior season, and I had to fight back to reclaim my position. And, I'm proud of that. I tell a lot of the kids that I work with, as well as my son, is that football is the greatest sport because it challenges you to how do you overcome adversity, right? You're a senior, started like 50 straight games, got benched, had to suck it up, kept working hard, kept chopping. And then before you know it, we're at UConn, Mike's struggling. It's halftime. They put me back in, and the rest is history. So hopefully we had that transition from what I did to what Mike Teal did and all the success Mike had after me to what Ethan's doing now and hopefully AJ for the next 2 to 3 years.
We were talking about this being maybe the biggest game of Greg Schiano 2.0. I'm curious, in your mind, what was the first big game of Schiano 1.0? And were you in it? I mean, I'm looking back to some of those games. Is there one that sticks out in your mind where you thought that this was a turning point or just an enormous game?
Well, I think the year we beat Michigan State, I want to say that was 2004 at home. And then, of course, the next week lose to New Hampshire. But it was that was one moment, I think, when we became bowl eligible in 2005 to get to that 6th win. I think some of that UConn win on the road my senior season was huge. And then blowing out Cincinnati to get to that 7th win. I think, some big games my senior year. And then obviously when Mike came in with all the other stud athletes, they took it to a whole nother level. But it was interesting because my senior year was 2005. The Louisville game was the following, or was it 2006, right? So I was on the sideline for that game, and that was one of the coolest moments, but I wish I was part of it as a player, but was certainly there as a fan.
Is it easier to look back on, you laughed when you mentioned the New Hampshire game. Is it easier to look back on that, 20 years later? Because I imagine in the moment, you guys, Greg certainly must have been just fuming after that. When you look back on moments, obviously it's fun to look back on the good wins, but when you look back on moments like that, is it easier to kind of just think about them and
yeah, you forget that Chip Kelly was, I think, the offensive coordinator of the team, so it's a little less of a blow. But I think again, it just challenges you on how you overcome adversity very easily. We won that game against Michigan State. We had a huge letdown against New Hampshire. We could have let that kind of dictate the rest of the season, and we really didn't. So I think, again, football, especially the quarterback position, prepares you for overcoming adversity and real life challenges, right? Because losing to New Hampshire is nothing compared to what we all kind of go through on our daily basis in our professional lives and our personal lives and raising children. So it was an interesting time, but I'm glad that we were able to kind of overcome it.
Ryan, I think if I were to make a list of like the 10 people who were instrumental behind the scenes when things went into the shitter with Greg and the negotiations, that difficult period of time when it looked like they were not going to get him back as coach, about 4 days, 5 days. I forgot how long it lasted, but you were there, you were behind the scenes working every possible angle. I want to ask you about that first. What do you remember about it? And then second, has this as 2.0 lived up to your hopes at that point?
Well, I could write a book about what happened during that whole process. And, when they let Ash go and then they created this committee, I said to myself, this is my opportunity to make a mark on the program. Greg is available. He's the only guy that can do it. So I took a meeting with Pat Hobbs and search committee. I brought in Brian Leonard and Anthony Calley, and we were very close to this whole thing. And when things went south, that's when I got Bob Mulcahy involved, and we're calling the governor's office, and I'm calling donors, and I'm doing back end deals with your guys' crew, and it was certainly an interesting time in the sense that during a coaching search, you think but you really don't know. There's a lot of stuff that goes behind it, and there was a lot of I would say things that were not real and kind of false narratives that I was hearing both sides of it. And I was playing kind of like telephone to make sure that, no, that's not what's happening. That's not what he thinks. That's not what he wants. So I take pride in it. I'll never forget. It almost felt like a full-time job because I'm getting updates all the time. I'm giving updates all the time. I'll never forget one of the coolest moments was in 2019. And when we were doing this whole process, it was me and my father-in-law, Bob Mulcahy, in my basement, just making phone calls and just calling donors and calling whoever we had to kind of circle the wagons. And we're calling Greg and it was a really cool experience because we felt like we were making a difference. And, Pat actually thanked me in an introductory press conference when Schiano was hired. So I thought that was very cool. So, but Steve, going back to your question, the 2.0, would we like to see more wins? Absolutely. I get frustrated at times. I will say the best part about living in Florida is that after a tough Rutgers loss, I don't have to pack up the tailgate and wait 2 hours in the line to get home. I could just turn it off and jump in the pool and continue on with my day. So that's one of the best parts. But I think that we need to be able to generate money. we need to be able to get better players. I think we're investing into the coaches. I think you are seeing incremental improvements when it comes to the offensive side of the ball. It'd just be nice to have a team where we're balanced at all three levels, right? Special teams, defense, and offense. So slightly disappointed, but I still see that there's huge potential. I know Greg's the right guy. I think it starts with Saturday. We got to get to 6 wins. We got to get to another bowl game. We got to get all those practices back. And then we got to be able to have a great offseason, hit that transfer portal. College football, guys, has changed so much that every single year you could rebuild your roster. I mean, just look at Indiana. You guys talk about it on every podcast. So it's a big offseason, probably the biggest offseason in Rutgers history. But we also have the biggest opportunity of the season on Saturday.
Before going to Penn State, you mentioned raising money. You mentioned Pat Hobbs. Just have you had a chance to talk to Kelly Zinn and see what she's doing, or have you just kind of been watching from afar?
Watching from afar. I would love to meet her. Everything I've heard about her is fantastic. I think she has the right mindset. It's good when you have the alignment of the president and the athletic director and then the board of governors, right? So we have everything teed up. And I think what Greg made those comments to, I think it was Steve, your question a few weeks back about, well, we had the Knights of the Raritan, right? Which I was a part of that, but we don't have anything. To Greg's point, like you guys have no idea how bad it was. And now we actually have a plan. So let's give this team an offseason or two with the plan and see if we can execute.
What's your sense of Greg? You know, I never thought he was going to be a guy who like Joe Paterno did and coach forever. I mean, how long do you think he wants to keep going on the sidelines? You know him pretty well.
I asked him if he could stick around until my son is of age to recruit him. So that's at least 3 or 4 more years. But no, I think he has a passion for it. He lives 5 minutes from the building. He's got all of his sons working there. He's got a family atmosphere. You know, I see another 4 to 5 years minimum, as long as if he can do what he does best, it has that CEO mentality, doesn't have to go raise money and just coaches, right? Get back to the basics. I think then he'll continue to do it. But if we did make this switch at athletic director and bring in someone that's going to give him reinforcements and real money and let him do what he does best, I don't know how much longer he would have had. So I'm glad we did this change.
To your point on Greg's passion, I'm always curious about this because no one cares about this but us, but we sit waiting for his press conferences for 45 minutes after every game. And I always wonder to myself, what is he doing in the locker room? Like, what is he saying? Like, what is going on? And again, there's license here. You were there 20 years ago. He possibly could have changed, but I'm just curious. What was Greg Schiano like in the locker room after a win? And what was he like in the locker room after a loss, like New Hampshire, let's say, since we brought it
up? So he's all about attention to detail, right? So if it would be a loss, it'd be a loss like, okay, why are we losing? Well, it's because you guys care more about having the Gatorades that are in the hotel. You're putting them in your bag so you can take them to your dorm room after the game. Why do you have 40 Gatorades in your bag? You should be focused on the game. He would call that out all the time. And it was, you know, like, again, attention to detail about everything, but also the wins. I think going back to your comment, one of the big games I'll never forget was against, I think it was 2004 against Vanderbilt on the road. It was against Jay Cutler's team, and it was one of the biggest comebacks in Rutgers history. And we had a cake in there for someone's birthday, and he got so excited. He took the cake, smashed it over his face, threw it down, jumped on a board. It was on a table, and he has a lot of emotion. I mean, he's really true when he says that he pours everything into it every single week. That part of the reason why you're waiting 45 minutes because the man's freaking exhausted, right? And he needs to debrief with his coaches first, and then he's got to give the team speech, right? And then he's got to take a couple deep breaths, and by the time he gets upstairs to see you all, he's spent, right? So you could see it. But
apparently washing the cake off his face too. I didn't realize that was one of the delays. I've never heard the cake story. I heard the Gatorade story. I heard that one. That's a classic.
Right into his face. It was awesome.
That's great.
It's a shame because today, like, there's a camera crew filming literally everything within, you know, a 2-mile radius of SHI Stadium. I really hope someone has archival footage of Greg just like smashing it. And also that poor guy whose birthday it was, he didn't get to have any cake.
I know.
Right? Some kid like, it's my cake, coach, my cake. We need to.
I think. So obviously, I was dating. So I married Bob Mulcahy's youngest daughter, Deirdre. We were dating at the time, And I remember Bob telling me the story, like, yeah, we had to write a check to Vanderbilt because we made a little bit too much damage in the locker and celebrating after the game. So I thought that was pretty cool.
It's fantastic.
That's awesome.
Fantastic.
Oh, and fun fact, by the way, Catherine Tappan, who I thought was a great interview that you guys did, is best friends with my wife, Deirdre. They grew up together. So I was glad that you guys got that on, and she was fantastic. She's
Small
really,
world.
really
But
good.
since you brought it up, I want to ask, what was it? So when you first started dating Bob Mulcahy's daughter, was there a moment? Because he was, he's an approachable guy, but he's still he's a dude. Was there a moment where you were like, had to, intimidated by him, or you had to ask for her hand or something like that?
I think that moment was that oh shit moment was the first time I went to his house for a meal, and I'm in the kitchen walking down the hall, and you see pictures of him and the family with the Pope and with different presidents, and I'm like, I am way over my skis right now. and my wife and girlfriend at the time was several years older than me, right? So I'm already out kicking my coverage. But yes, I mean, just we miss him every single day. It's been a few years now since he's passed. But when you talk about influential people, not only to the football program, but to the university, there's not a lot of people that have a plaque in front of the stadium, and he has a plaque right there by the statue. So really cool.
Awesome. Well, we're here in the biggest game of all time. Some would say the biggest game in the history of college sports. We're joking, obviously, but this is a really big game for Rutgers.
1969 when they played Princeton. That's what we're going with. Been a few games.
This is the kind of game they envisioned when they were playing out on the College Ave gym parking lot. Is when Rutgers plays Penn State in 2025. But anyway, Ryan, we'll let you go first since you're our guest. We have the line from what I saw, and it's early in the week. It was Penn State 10.5. What are we feeling? Do the Scarlet Knights pull out a win that could change a lot of feelings entering the offseason?
So I carry the same sentiment that, Brian, you share a lot, which is a lot of Rutgers fans, how much we despise Penn State. I am one of those people. And to me, this is our Super Bowl. This is our bowl game. Okay. So even if we win, we're going to Detroit the day after Christmas. This is our Super Bowl. I think that unfortunately, last Saturday night, and what Penn State did into Nebraska has made this game even more challenging because they're 5-6 as well. And they want to go to a bowl game, and they're playing for their interim head coach, who's a Penn State guy, and they still have dudes. They have depth, and they have dudes, and they have a lot of talent. So we're going to have to play really, really well. I think we need to take the recipe we did in the Ohio State first half, which is slow down the game, get some turnovers, hopefully not as many silly penalties, stay in it early on, okay? But what I've noticed with Rutgers is when we have success is when we get that first down. And what I would like to see is make some special teams plays. Every single kickoff we're doing a fair catch, and we have to do a 75-yard drive to score a touchdown. I like to get the ball, take some chances, do some returns, some trick plays. We need to win the turnover battle. It's very simple. We need to be able to make a play in special teams, win the turnover battle, okay? And we're just going to have to minimize the damage. What I say when I coach my flag football teams is, guys, we're going to bend, don't break. We can't give up long touchdown throws or runs. Let them sustain drives, force field goals, okay? And when we are in the red zone, let's be honest, we have not been good in the red zone this year. We have to score 7. We cannot win 3. If that means we have to go for it, we have to go for it. I'm not going to be the first person on your podcast to pick against Rutgers. I'm not going to be that guy. So I'm going to go Rutgers 31, Penn State 30.
Nice. Good job.
That's how we know that you're an actual listener of the podcast, because you know some inside baseball stuff like that.
Right.
I love it.
Yeah. And why we didn't have a guest picker last week, because I don't think no one wanted to be that guy last week. You want to go next, Fonseca, or what? If you want me to go?
Well, it's a hard act to follow because Ryan essentially hit on every point I wanted to make. So, I mean, I agree with you totally, right? Like, this is a game where you minimize the damage, try to win every down defensively without giving up big plays. You're going to give up points, right? Penn State's going to score. They're really talented. Just try to give up as little points early as possible, keep pace offensively, maybe build a bit of a lead to kind of be able to control the clock, and use the crowd to your advantage. I think if you give this crowd, which Steve and I talked about earlier in the pod, but if people show out and fill the stadium and they really, really want this win, and you give them something to hold on to, right? You can't give up a 75-yard touchdown on the second play of the game like you did against Maryland. You got to give them something to hold on to, let the emotions build up so that you're in the late third quarter, early fourth quarter, and that place is just an inferno. So I think it's really hard to make this pick because I think it could go either way. And I like Ryan, don't want to be the guy that picks against Rutgers and the biggest game of all time. So I'll go Rutgers 28 at Penn State 24 for a really, really, really important win. Selfishly, a win that would make our offseason infinitely easier for the podcast and for our writing.
Yeah, that's good. I got to say this, and I make these picks, Ryan, people always ask you, wow, why'd you pick blank? Why'd you pick? Because I make the picks with my head every week. Like I just think, why did I pick them? Because I thought they were going to win. It's really simple. This is one and I'm going to do it. I tell myself never to do it. I'm going to pick this one with my heart. I just think that they are due for a moment. They're just due. And logic tells me all the reasons why it's not going to happen. Bigger, stronger. Penn State still have the dudes up front on both lines. I get it. But they don't have the motivation. They're not looking for the same stakes that Rutgers has. I just think it's just time for another moment. It's been 20 years since Louisville, and they're going to get it. I'm picking Rutgers too. How about this positivity podcast right here? Michael?
Yeah,
I'm going to go. It's going to be a last second field goal. Bang it in. Jay Patel, 38-35 Rutgers. How you like that? Wow.
There we go.
Man.
There we go.
Where's
My only call out to the Rutgers Nation is let's not let the Penn State fans take over all the seats, right? Let's minimize the white. Let's bring as much red as possible.
Yeah.
To Steve's point, let's make that last second field goal. Let's bring down the goalpost. Let's take it out to Raritan River. Okay, take the party from Piscataway to New Brunswick and have a hell of a night. Let's have a Louisville night. You're gonna throw those goalposts in the Raritan. Is that what you're saying? That's your command to the Rutgers students after this game? Break it down, carry it out that tunnel, down the river. Let's go.
So you're clearly on the side of, because Steve and I debated this before, you're on the side of if you win this game, you storm the field. No questions asked.
100%. Why not? I know it's 6-6 and they're only going to be 5-7, but I think to Steve's point, you guys nailed it. It just provides so much momentum for the offseason. This is the biggest offseason in Rutgers, or Greg Schiano 2.0. I think he would admit that. But to be able to recruit, hit that transfer portal with a Penn State win, going to a bowl game, having all those practices are going to be huge for AJ as well, because that gives him the rep that we talked about in the beginning of this podcast. So I think for success, for recruitment, and I think, quite frankly, I can't wait to go to all these Penn State people and just say, look what we did. Look what we did, So anyways, I'm fired up. I appreciate you guys having me on. You're the best. And let's have a good one. I'm excited.
All right. Well, look, we can't thank you enough for joining us. We appreciate it. And we'll be back. Hey, win or lose, we'll be back here to discuss it as always. Thanks for watching. Enjoy the game, folks.
Thank you for listening to the Rutgers Rant, sponsored by the Heldridge Hotel. Head to NJ.com/Rutgers for more Scarlet Knight content.
Rinse takes your laundry and hand delivers it to your door, expertly cleaned and folded. So you could take the time once spent folding and sorting and waiting to finally pursue a whole new version of you. Like Tea Time You. Or this Tea Time You. Or even this Tea Time You.
Said you hear about Dave?
Or even Tea Time You.
So update on Dave.
It's up to you. We'll take the laundry. Rinse. It's time to be great.